We're driving to Manchester now to do the Rapha Prestige, and it's pretty wet.
Last year, BikeRadar as a team rode the Rapha Prestige in Cannock Chase. Incredibly muddy, but just a really fun day out. This year, Rapha have brought it back. They've made it bigger than last year, basing it in the centre of Manchester at the RCC Clubhouse, with a loop that takes us roughly northwest towards Bolton and around some pretty nice scenery.
Doesn't feel like we were in Manchester about an hour ago.
So the team this year was myself, Joe and Josh. Unfortunately, Jack couldn't make it this year because he just had his appendix out, so unlucky Jack. With the event being called the Rapha Cross Prestige, you'd expect lots of cross bikes, and that was certainly the case. There was quite a lot more sort of adventure type bikes, a few 3T Exploros, lots of Focus Murray's cross bikes. But my bike was something a little different. I only saw one other bike like it, and that's a single speed mountain bike.
I think that the most interesting one is going to be Reuben on the single speed.
So single speed mountain bikes is a type of bike I've been wanting to build for a long time. So the bike behind me is that single speed. It's my old Grand Canyon CF, bit of a mouthful. Repurposed. I just realised I wasn't using it very much, so I wanted to give it a new lease of life, because when I did ride it, really enjoyed it. In building this bike, the gearing is where I've learnt the most, and I've had to learn quite quickly because I've had a few problems which I'll get onto. The first is finding a gear range that balances a decent-ish flatland tarmac speed and allows you to get up steeper climbs. When I first rode the bike home from work, I had the 32 chainring up front and a 20-tooth cog. To put it mildly, riding on tarmac was painfully slow. I was spinning out probably about just over 15 miles an hour just on flat stuff, and immediately I knew I had to go bigger. That's when I started delving into BikeCalc.com. For those who don't know what BikeCalc is, it is an online calculator that lets you input a bunch of gears, different ranges, cadences, change your wheel size, your tyre size, and then it will show you your speed at cadence. It's a really useful calculator, not just for fixed or single speed riders, but for anyone that wants to understand more about changing gears and how that will affect you and your riding. One of the other big headaches I had when I was speccing this conversion was which chain tensioner to go for. I came across a Diamondback chain tensioner, had a few good reviews on Amazon, so just bought it. It was fairly cheap. When I first tested the bike at the Forest of Dean on the really steep Fire Road climb, I didn't have any problems. I could go absolute full torque, really slow cadence. It felt like I was putting maybe 400, 500, 600 watts through the pedals, and I was getting no problems. I thought, great, it's all sorted. All my problems were done, and it was two days before the Cross Prestige, and yeah, I was going into it quite confident that the bike would actually survive.
Getting loads of chain slip for some reason. The next 4 hours are going to be pretty slow for me.
So I've ridden the bike at 2 events now. I'm still having some problems, but I think I might know what the cause is.
He's thinking, skin suit for a sportive?
At the Cross Prestige, I thought the chain tensioner was the problem. It felt as though the tensioner was getting caught somehow and it's flicking up, but that didn't really make too much sense as we couldn't figure out what would be causing that. I even went so far as to replace the jockey wheel on that Diamondback chain tensioner with a jockey wheel from an old derailleur. That just means I went from a jockey wheel with bushings to a jockey wheel with sealed bearings, which in theory would make it run smoother, and I thought maybe that could be a fix to it. I also bought Surly's Singulator chain tensioner. I thought with what felt like a better quality item that could fix my problems, because the Diamondback one had quite a lot of play, but the Singulator also has a bit of play, so I think that's just inherent to chain tensioners, so I don't think it was that. And at the Badlands Gravelcross event, the problems only seem to happen when riding through some really sticky mud and grime, and the sort of mud that just clings to your bike, and that mimicked the Cross Prestige as well, like the sections where it was really muddy and the bike was covered in mud. That's when I seem to get the most problems, and the periods where we're riding on the road and it was a lot drier, I'd never seem to have those problems. So it felt like in the grime I was having problems, when it was dry and relatively clean I wasn't. So that led me to thinking one of two things. Doubling up on narrow wide and the chainring and the cog could be a bit extreme, maybe you don't need that, or the chain line is ever so slightly off. Let's just say that's an ongoing investigation, but I think the chain line is the problem, and now I've been eyeballing it. I'm going to have to get the ruler out, probably get some vernier calipers out and measure it absolutely accurately, but I think, or at least I hope, that that's the problem.
It's flat times at Ridden High, Reuben. First flat of the day though, so I can't complain.
We helped out a guy to single speed his bike. His bike was working, it was fine, we just forced him to go single speed.
People make fun of the bag. It's a bag of tricks, Reuben.
So what's been happening is the chain is actually jumping off the cog at the top. Now I can't see that when I'm riding, so all I can see and feel is the tensioner jumping up. And it would kind of make sense that the tension is getting pulled upwards if the chain is coming off the cog just temporarily and then slipping back in. It'd feel like the tension is jolting, which is the only experience I can feel and see. So Jack very thankfully noticed this during one section at the Badlands.
As that goes up, obviously the cog is bigger, so the chain tensioner just loses its tension.
Yeah.
So I did a little bit of a test of cleaning the cog, just squirting it with some water, and continue riding it through some pretty boggy, sticky, muddy trails, which is a great part of the day, but it felt like that was the cause of the issue.
Yes!
So I haven't quite got single speed right yet, but it feels like a discipline that lends itself to lots of tinkering. I'd say it's a mix of headache and fun. I'm really hoping less of the headache, more of the fun, because when I first wanted to build a single speed bike, it felt like one speed, one gear, simple, you know, not very complicated, but I was quite wrong. I hold my hands up to that. I feel like with the amount I've learned in the past couple of weeks, it will go more to that fun side than the headache side. And I am keen to get this right. I will commit to getting this right because I feel like it's a very interesting concept, especially for events like the Dirty Reaver or the Grinduro, which are both definitely on the calendar for me next year. And for those that watched our Grinduro video, you would have seen that Jack and I concluded that for the UK, hardtail mountain bikes are probably the best gravel bikes, but just for the UK. Our trails are very different to what I've personally experienced in Colorado and Kansas, so bigger tyres, more compliant tyres, definitely better. Plus, the thing with gravel and single speeds is I will always have Jack to ride inappropriate bikes with, so at least I'm not alone in this venture.
Oh my god, I just completely went straight through the middle of that.
Let me know if you have any advice for someone that's new to the single speed life in the comments below, or you can hit me up on Instagram at Rubsa, ROOBSA. So always willing to talk and learn, and hopefully someone with more experience can kind of direct me in how to do this properly.